Welcome to the Recommended Daily Value Podcast, your daily dose into the health and wellness world.
Welcome back to the Recommended Daily Value Podcast, where we dive into everything health, fitness, and nutrition related 5 days a week in 5 minutes or less. This podcast is brought to you by Umzu, and I'm your host, Tyler Woodward. Today, we're going to try something different. Instead of doing the typical one-off episodes, we're going to try doing a 5-part educational series with one episode building off the next. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Here we go. How to boost your testosterone, part 1. Today, we're going to start with the physiology of testosterone. So if you want to boost your testosterone, you should probably at least have some idea of what testosterone is and how it functions in the body. Testosterone is one of the main steroid hormones in the body, and steroid actually refers to the chemical structure of the molecule, which directly relates to its effects. Testosterone is known for its masculinizing effects, hence why so many famous athletes have used it to enhance performance and increase muscle growth, although it's also essential in women, just in smaller amounts. I think the simplest, or one of the simplest ways to view testosterone is as a nutrient partitioning hormone. Basically, testosterone signals to the body to send more of a given resource to lean body tissue to promote muscle growth, which results, obviously, in increased muscle mass. This makes a lot of sense when you consider the infamous steroid study, which found that participants who received steroids but didn't work out gained significantly more muscle mass on the couch than the subjects who actually went to the gym but weren't on steroids, which we covered on RDV number 70, so go give that a listen. But back to testosterone. Testosterone promotes the most growth in the areas with the highest concentration of the androgen receptors. You might think about androgen receptors as like a mailbox that only opens to the androgenic hormones, primarily testosterone and DHT. These receptor sites can either be bound to a ligand sitting on the cellular membrane along the outside of the cell, in the middle of the cell in the cytoplasm, or within the DNA, which is located in the nucleus of the cell. When these androgens bind to their receptor site, it signals to the cell to start producing certain proteins, in part via the DNA. This is definitely oversimplified, but it provides a good starting point to think about. We all have these androgen receptors built into our DNA, both men and women, but how active they are determines the end result. Which is why if you give anyone androgens via injecting TRT or other steroids, they start to exhibit these androgenic effects. So you may see increases in bone density, muscle mass, facial hair growth, sperm production, changes in where you hold your body fat, how deep your voice is, etc. Men have more of these androgen receptors and produce more androgens, so they tend to naturally exhibit more of these effects. And if you give someone more of these hormones, the effects will become even more pronounced. We often think of testosterone as being mainly produced in the testes by the Leydig cells, and to a lesser degree in the adrenals, particularly for women, but I don't think this is inherently accurate. Every cell in the body likely has the capacity to produce testosterone in very small amounts, as all cells produce and utilize cholesterol. And cholesterol is the precursor to all steroid hormones, including testosterone. The difference is that the Leydig cells in the testes produce much higher quantities of testosterone and export a lot of that testosterone into general circulation into the body, to be used by the rest of the tissues that utilize testosterone, like bones, muscle, heart, liver, brain, pretty much everything. In the body, testosterone comes in 3 forms, more or less. Number 1, free testosterone, which is testosterone that's not bound to anything, it's just sitting in the blood waiting to be absorbed and utilized. Free testosterone only makes up a very small portion of our total testosterone, with about 98% of it being bound to either SHBG, or sex hormone binding globulin, or albumin. Albumin, more similar to free testosterone, is able to be absorbed by cells and utilized, but testosterone bound to SHBG is pretty much rendered unusable. The sum of testosterone bound to SHBG, albumin, and free testosterone is known as your total testosterone. In general, testosterone today is a pretty hot topic, and I think that a lot of that is rooted, at least in part, in the low testosterone epidemic that's occurring today, which we'll address more thoroughly tomorrow. But before I let you all go, I just wanted to discuss some underlying characteristics required for testosterone production. First, the reason the testes exist outside the body is because they are very sensitive to heat and actually function optimally at a lower body temperature compared to the rest of the body. The majority of our body functions optimally at around 98 degrees or 37 degrees Celsius, but the testes prefer being at about 93 degrees Fahrenheit. Secondly, testes are also very sensitive to oxidative stress. So when metabolism goes wrong for any number of reasons, testosterone production is usually one of the first things we see decline, which also implies that in order to optimize testosterone production, we need to optimize metabolism. Due to the near endless list of things that we're exposed to and eat that interfere with our metabolism, it probably shouldn't come as a huge surprise that so many men are suffering with low T today. Low testosterone is technically known as hypogonadism, and within hypogonadism there are 2 types. Type 1 hypogonadism is referred to as testicular failure, meaning the testicles themselves are not producing enough testosterone. versus type 2, hypogonadism, which occurs when there is a deficiency in the signaling to make testosterone from the brain via the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, often abbreviated as the HPA axis, with type 1 hypogonadism being much more common than type 2. It's also well established that testosterone levels decline with age. Quote unquote, testosterone levels decline with age by about 0.5 to 2% per year in community-dwelling men. However, this decline in testosterone is accelerated by age-related accumulation of comorbidities, especially obesity. This suggests that in older men, low testosterone is more a robust marker of poor health rather than a causal factor. While I don't agree with the fact that testosterone synthesis inherently declines with age, it's often talked about, so it's worth mentioning. To end this, I'll leave you with a few quotes about testosterone and steroid synthesis. First, from the GOAT himself, Ray Peat. Quote unquote, cholesterol, which with adequate thyroid hormone and vitamin A, is converted into the steroid hormones pregnenolone, progesterone, and DHA, and also testosterone, which he didn't mention in the quote. Again, pointing to the importance of metabolism in relation to steroid hormone production. And lastly, here are a few quotes about testosterone from Rachel A. Davey and Mathis Grossman from a paper titled Androgen Receptor Structure, Function, and Biology from Bench to Bedside. Quote unquote, DHT being more biologically active than testosterone, binding to the androgen receptor with a 2-fold higher affinity and a decreased dissociation rate of 5-fold compared to testosterone, meaning that DHT has a proportionally much stronger effect than testosterone, as it's twice as likely to bind to the androgen receptor, and it stays bound to the androgen receptor 5 times as long. So it's a lot more powerful, basically. It's also important to note that testosterone can be converted into estrogen through a process known as aromatization, or can be converted into DHT through the 5-alpha reductase enzyme. Once converted into DHT, it's more or less stuck there as it cannot be aromatized to estrogen. Estrogen, on the other hand, promotes testosterone aromatization, so converting testosterone into DHT is likely one of the body's ways of preserving androgens and androgen activity. Well, that's it for this episode, so make sure to stay tuned tomorrow for nutrition for boosting your testosterone. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button and to share with a friend. Remember that these opinions are my own, based on my own research and experiences, and is not medical advice. Until next time, be good.